The 1995 Conservative leadership election was initiated when incumbent leader and Prime Minister John Major resigned as leader on the 22nd of June 1995, in order to face his critics within the party. On the 4th of July 1995 he was re-elected, beating the only other candidate, a former Secretary of State for Wales John Redwood. For some years the Conservative Party had been deeply divided on the issue of the European Union, and there had been much speculation each year that Major would be challenged from the leadership during the annual re-election of the leader each November. Many both within and outside the party believed that the constant speculation was highly damaging, and so Major took the dramatic step to force an early contest. He announced his decision in a speech in the garden of 10 Downing Street, famously challenging his party opponents to put up or shut up. The Conservative government was also proving unpopular with the British public at the time, trailing the Labour Party in opinion polls and having suffered heavy losses in local elections for 3 successive years, as well as a poor performance in the previous year's European elections. Contest rules. Under the rules at the time, there would be a series of ballots conducted by the 1922 committee, with the committee's chairman, Sir Marcus Fox, serving as returning officer. Since the leadership was vacant, candidates required the nomination of only 2 MPs. In the first round, a candidate needed to win the backing of an absolute majority of MPs. In addition, they needed to have a margin over the nearest rival of 15% of the total electorate. Had neither of these been achieved, then a second ballot would take place the following week. Nominations would be reopened, and at this stage an absolute majority only would be required. If this did not happen, then the top 2 candidates would go forward to a third round. Because of this process, the first round was widely regarded as the expression of confidence or otherwise in Major. Many speculated that if he did not achieve outright victory, then he would resign, enabling more prominent Conservatives such as Michael Heseltine and Michael Portillo to stand in the second round. Candidates and the platforms. John Major announced he would be a candidate for re-election from the outset and stood pledging continuity in office and the continuation of a broad-based approach to government. The only candidate to enter the race was John Redwood, who resigned from the cabinet as Secretary of State for Wales. Redwood ran on a staunchly Eurosceptic Thatcherite manifesto. Prominent Conservatives who did not stand. There were several Conservatives who did not stand in the first round but were either widely expected to stand in the event of a second round or did not stand for another reason. They included Kenneth Clarke, Chancellor of the Exchequer and on the pro-European wing of the party; Michael Heseltine, President of the Board of Trade, who had challenged Margaret Thatcher in the 1990 contest; Norman Lamont, a former Chancellor of the Exchequer and a staunch Eurosceptic; Michael Portillo, Secretary of State for Employment and widely seen as the heir to the Thatcherite wing of the party; Gillian Shepherd, Secretary of State for Education. Interest was generated when it was reported that both Heseltine and Portillo had had a large number of telephone lines installed at offices, widely presumed to be a preparation for a second-round bid. When this was raised during Prime Minister's questions, Major laughingly attributed this to the effect of telephone privatization. During the voting, Heseltine felt the need to publicly display his ballot paper to show that he had voted for Major. The campaign. The period between the launch of the election and polling was short. The main interest occurred when Michael Heseltine publicly and strongly endorsed Major, which many commentators felt reinforced his position. Redwood's leadership bid came under much fire. His campaign slogan was, "No change, no chance." A poster was issued on his behalf, written by Redwood's campaign manager David Evans, which urged Conservatives to vote Redwood to "save your seat." "Save your party, and save your country." At a personal level, his nickname of the Vulcan reached prominence and much lampooning in the media, whilst his formal launch of his campaign was dismissed as a collection of all the mavericks on the right of the party, widely undermining his bid's credibility. The first and only ballot. The first ballot was as follows. Major had both an outright majority and the necessary 15% margin, but had received only 3 more votes than his private minimum target of 215. Had he polled lower, he had made up his mind to resign outright. Consequences: no further contested leadership election took place until after the Conservatives lost the 1997 general election in the face of a Labour landslide. Under Tony Blair, the party temporarily reunited. Michael Heseltine had given Major staunch support in the contest and as a result was promoted to the position of Deputy Prime Minister. However, many believed that Heseltine had now missed his last chance to become Prime Minister, as he was now in his 60s. Portillo's failure to stand was widely felt to have cost him dearly. Redwood emerged as a clear alternative leader of the right of the party, whilst many argued Portillo had lacked the nerve to make a first-round challenge and potentially allowed Major to survive. William Hague, still aged only 34 at the time, was promoted to the cabinet to Redwood's position as Welsh Secretary. When Major resigned as leader after losing the 1997 general election, Hague was thus in a position to stand for and win the leadership.